Terrarian in the Dungeon, Chapter 24b, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of his stories. Across the city, Freya was sitting in her penthouse suite near the upper floors of the Tower of Babel's living quarters, and she was livid. Alan. Freya's voice of velvet and seduction carried over to the male cat beastkin. But the voice may have velvet in it, but the voice's tone only had pure wrath dripping from each syllable. I am going to give you a chance. Why did you disobey my orders and instead have an aberrant minotaur attack my Belle instead of the simple enhanced one that Ottar had tested to be the right fit for Belle's strength? Alan, normally wearing a body-clinging armor that allowed him to take advantage of his status as the fastest fighter in all of Ottar, was in tatters and had none of the honed edge such an adventurer should have. Ottar had thoroughly broken his fangs in the dungeon in rage at how his second in the familia had so flagrantly shattered their beloved goddess's plans. You have changed, Lady Freya, Alan spoke gutturally as he had more than a couple broken ribs. Before Belle came into the picture, the only time you would mess around was when you would switch places with Horn and become seer and wander the mortal world. We were all fine with that. No, we even respected you as our beloved goddess that worked a menial job to connect with the mortal world. Alan then shook his head as his yellow slit eyes locked onto the form of Freya, who was sitting in her lounge chair in the shadows, not even looking at his broken form and only staring out towards Ottar. But you obsess over that brat despite how each and every single one of us, here in your very familia, bleeds and dies for your attention in the pits. Alan spat some blood from his mouth onto the ground, and Ottar, who was behind Alan, growled at the perceived offense, but Freya held up a perfectly manicured hand to stop Ottar from snapping the cat beastkin's neck from behind. So, you set up Belle to die out of jealousy? Freya finally asked, and the room went dead silent as even the wind above Ottar seemingly didn't dare to enter the tension-filled room. Yes, Lady Freya, I wanted Belle to die by that minotaur, and I would do it again if only to return you the edge you had before Belle came into Ottar, Alan said straightforwardly without shame or trying to weasel out of any form of punishment. Because Alan had his own pride. Freya went silent as she digested Alan's heartfelt words, and for a split moment, she wondered if her desire to polish Belle into her Ottar or husband was for naught, especially with how Belle had literally been turned into a woman. A fetching woman, to be fair, especially with her pure soul. But a woman nonetheless. But whether it was Belle with her pure soul that Freya wanted to hold within her bosom, or even Jake's kaleidoscope of a soul and the infinite potential growth he would bring to Ottar, Freya realized something. Alan's jealousy would very well bring such plans to death, as he just said he would do the same thing all over again. So, Freya sighed and her eyes glowed purple with a mind-shattering charm as she paralyzed Alan's mind before she looked to Ottar behind Alan. Ottar, my dear. Do it. A loud whip-cracking noise rang out as the strongest man in Ottar simply took a step forward, and with both hands he grabbed Alan's chin, and with a sharp twist and jerk, Alan Frommel's neck and spinal cord snapped, ending the level 6 life as his head got twisted around. Freya with her glowing purple eyes stared silently at Alan's form as it slumped when Ottar gently laid it down on a thick carpeted floor, and finally, Freya spoke as her eyes stopped glowing with her charm. Ottar, my dear. Take Alan and bury him in the familia grave, and... Freya paused before she shook her head. Remind the others that shattering my dreams will not be tolerated despite my care for them. Ottar knew all too well that the warning was for the likes of the Gulliver brothers and the elf duo Hedin and Hegin, who were all very attached to Freya, and that they must not do the same actions that Alan took to return Freya familia to what it was before. Ottar, ever Freya's most devoted tool and supporter, merely nodded while mentally categorizing who may become an issue, as he had long accepted Freya's love was a freely flowing wind, and that obsessing over it was like lamenting that sun went down at night. He would do everything and anything for Freya, but he wouldn't limit or even dream of changing her desires, as Freya was everything to him. Yes, my lady, it will be done. Good night, my lady, and as you requested, Hythe Velvet will be guarding your suite for the night. Ottar said as he picked up Alan's form and began carrying him out.